Hello viewers, welcome to this week's edition of your program. It is Economic Insights and I'm your host, Paul Kingsley. Now, in continuation with the ongoing report we are doing on infrastructure development in Nigeria, today we are focusing on the power sector, where we have a man in the building to give us their contribution and also the challenges affecting the power sector in Nigeria today. It's going to be an interesting conversation. We'll be dissecting on some of the various issues, affecting the power sector in Nigeria today. Joining us, like I said, is a man who, in no small way, have contributed to the development of the power sector. I'm talking of the Managing Director, CEO of Power System and Automation Solutions Limited, is Engineer Ifesie Ikechukwu Boniface. Sit back, relax. It promised to be an interesting conversation. I'll be back after this time out.
Power System and Automation Solutions Limited has distinguished itself to become one of the leading indigenous companies in Nigeria, providing qualitative, timely, and cost-effective services in the power sector. The company was founded in 2008 with the aim of delivering services in the area of electric power generation, transmission and distribution with the competence and innovative solutions to all ranges of power system problems. Engineer Ifesie Ikechukwu Boniface is the Managing Director, CEO.
Power System and Automation Solutions Limited is an engineering, procurement and construction company in the area of power generation, transmission and distribution, with innovation and cutting-edge solutions to a whole range of power system problems. I think I have the innate ability in the area of engineering, especially electrical and electronic systems. I also see setting up this company as providing the gap that is there in the power sector presently, and that we have been doing. Actually, Power System and Automation Solutions Limited does a whole lot of engineering services, some of which are primary system design, secondary system design, test and commissioning, power flow analysis, short circuit study, transformer oil filtration and analysis, earthing system calculations and study, static calculation, structural analysis and footing analysis. We also do control protection system design. We also build our control protection panels.
Power System and Automation Solutions is highly equipped with young dynamic management and technical team with years of corporate and field experience to undertake and execute any given task in its field of endeavors.
Power System and Automation Solutions Limited has really contributed to the development in the area of power system infrastructure. We've been involved in a number of transmission, substation construction, power plant substations. We've also, at some point, contributed to saving the government millions of dollars through our advice and consultancy services to them. One of those numerous projects we've done that I can't really forget, that once I remember that, it still gives me a smile on my face, was Sapele Power Plant Switchyard Rehabilitation and Extension. It was actually one of the last of NIPP projects to be awarded in 2009 and the first to be commissioned in 2010. That I handled in conjunction with some foreign partners. In addition to that, the company also in conjunction with Some partners have been able to do the extension of Katampe 1x150, 132, 330, 132 kV substation. The Mando 1x150, 330, 132, 33 kV substation extension. Kumboso 1x60, 132, 33 kV substation extension. And the central area here, 1x60 MVA, 132, 33 kV substation extension. And then in Lagos, in Ikeja West, we extended the existing station there by adding a 150 MVA 330 132 kV transformer. We also extended the Ojo substation by adding 2x60 MVA 132 33 kV substation. And then at Abara, we extended the substation by 1x60 MVA 132 33 kV. Then we also did the Jos 330 132 kV substation extension, the Makurdi 132 kV substation extension, and then presently we're about commissioning Aloji 300 MVA 330 132 kV substation. I think we'll be commissioning that station by this week. Presently, we are working on the automated meter reading and meter data management for the entire transmission company. By the time this project is completed, it's going to really add a whole lot of transparency to the market operations. Project executions come with their own issues. One of them that is obvious is in the area of duty exemption. For equipment being imported for express use in the power sector normally comes with duty exclusion. So that means that there was no inclusion in the bidding cost duty, as they are not payable. Now the government in some cases fail now to provide these exemption certificates before the arrival of the equipment. It means that this equipment get to the port, start accruing demurrage from terminal operators and shipping companies. In most cases, this goes so high as to even exceed the content of the equipment you brought in. Now, another problem is in proper funding of the project. I mentioned the issues we have from appropriation. So, projects are not judiciously funded, giving rooms to contractors to borrow money in some cases and burn their fingers, because the financial interest rate will sometimes go beyond the profit margin you have put within those projects. So these are huge problems and challenges. So we also have this poor coordination between contractors. If you have a different contractor that is working on a substation and another one working on a transmission line that are to be linked, and the completion of that substation is when it's energized. You cannot energize the substation when the line is not there. So there are a number of substations that have really been completed but cannot be energized because the lines are not there, and the contractor cannot have their takeover certificate. They cannot have their retention. Everything held up. So these are the number of issues. You have vandalization of transmission lines. You have vandalization of substation equipment. You have host community issues. You have security issues. In most cases, security issues have forced a number of contractors even out of their project sites. The NIPP project, when it was conceived, was when President Obasanjo went to commission the Omok power plant built by Rivers State. So he saw that being done by a state and said, oh, if a state could do this, then the federal government should be able to do much better. So he really wanted to see those things conceived before the expiration of his tenure then. So a number of things were not done prior to the commencement of those projects. Proper feasibility studies were not done. A number of lands were not acquired for those project sites. In fact, after contract awards, so many contractors never had land where they build their projects. So some of those were really factors, but the major blow was the probe, the NIPP probe. You see, the government changed and they started probing a project in the middle of the project execution. So that stopped the project for over 2 years. And then coming back was like starting afresh. So that brought a whole lot of variations into the system. In fact, it tripled, in most cases even more than that, the entire cost of the project execution. And from that period, so many contractors never recovered. As I mentioned, not all the projects that did not have maybe studies or land for commencement at the beginning. So some of those immediately went into project execution and then started following up their planned execution arrangements. So also a number of contractors have different approach to project execution. There are those that really have good management team that could really take care of a number of unforeseen circumstances, just like the ones we handled. I told you, we were the last to be awarded and then the first to commission. And you can be wondering, how did this happen? If projects were awarded in 2006 and the one that was awarded in 2009 got completed in 2010, meanwhile the other ones were still not completed. So what was the secret? And then it was quite a very big project. The entire rehabilitation of the Sapele Ugro power plant switcher that was built in 1978, having so many steam turbines and gas turbines, and with lines linking Alaja, Benin, and so on. We did that plus the extension.
The ever-increasing demand and meager supply of energy in Nigeria has been a great challenge to her development. This situation is becoming critical, with increasing population not balanced by an adequate energy development program. The incessant power generation failure has grossly affected the economy, seriously slowing down development in rural and sub-rural settlements.
One, we have to first of all look at what is really required to build a power plant. Actually, the capital investment is huge. It requires about $1 million to build just 1 megawatt of electricity, right? So that aside, our installed generation capacity as of today is really nothing to write home about. It stands at about 7,333 megawatts. That is not really enough to drive our industrial growth. The economy viability really depends on the viability of that sector. So we need in excess of about 100,000 megawatts to really be able to really start making meaningful development towards our industrial growth. I will give you some instances. I'll give you examples with some countries of the world, their population and their generation capacity. Okay, South Africa is close to us here. They have population of about 50 million people, and presently they have installed capacity of about 52,000 megawatts. Turkey has a population of about 82 million people, and they have installed capacity of 92,000 megawatts. Okay, let's look at USA. Population of about 300 million people, and generation installed capacity of over 1.5 million megawatts. Nigeria, a population of about 200 million people, let's put it at that, with installed capacity of 7,000 megawatts. Now, that must have painted a lucid picture to you about what is really happening. But despite this poor generation capacity, despite this poor installed capacity, we are not even able to distribute the power being generated, because a number of generating companies or generation companies have their machines in idle positions as we talk, because they can't really wheel out the generated power. The capacity is not there from the distribution companies. Now, this is really a major problem. But by the time this problem is solved, then we'll have to now come back to face another problem on the power generation infrastructure we have. The suppressed load we presently have at the distribution ends are way in excess of the generation capacity. So what is really the problem? We'll also see those things as we go down. Now, coming to other issues why the power sector is really not moving so well. Our method of funding, the appropriation, is really not too consistent. You see, projects are awarded and the government in some cases, sometimes, do not really follow up strictly with their own responsibility of funding those projects. And in sometimes when a project that's supposed to be completed in 3 years, the first year goes up and then the following budget may not even have that project reflected. It ends up funding that project that you see at the end of the value, the amount of money you've spent has nothing commensurate to the value, and also gives contractors the room to be bringing variations upon variations, and at the end of the day, there are no tangible development. So this method of funding really has to change. Then also, if we look at privatization, I think, in my own opinion, that it was privatizing that generation department was really too premature, because now we have really left the business of generation in the business of private investors. Government may tell you that in the next 5 years or in the next 10 years we are going to be at particular generation capacity. How? That is just like paying lip services, because they are not themselves doing those projects. And you cannot decide the pace for somebody that is bringing his own fund and resources to put into those. Now, there are a whole lot of things that are really not making it appetizing for companies to come in and invest. One of them is political instability. The other is security issues. So all these things have really made the system to be at a standstill. Yes, we may be feeling now that we have a quite large number or quite enough generation that is not being wheeled out. By the time the issues that is militating against proper distribution of this power is solved, then you see that we really have nothing. Also, it is further discouraging more investors from coming in the generation sector, because the capacity can no longer be guaranteed. If they come to put on this huge investment, they cannot be guaranteed of selling the power after it has been generated.
According to industry experts in the energy sector, the continuous electricity load rejection by distribution companies could worsen the epileptic power supply and cause more economic loss to the country.
Not 100%. Part of the initial problem they have were created by the government. That's before the privatization. There was no pilot study or pilot project where these problems and these issues that are being faced will have been initially seen, identified, and solutions profiled to them. The distribution companies on their own parts did not do realistic feasibility studies. Otherwise, they would have also been able to see these things. Now, I'll tell you some of the challenges they're having. One of them is lack or poor studies, low studies. They actually do not know what load are in the individual houses that make up a region or so that they are operating in. So without this information, how do you size the cables, the size of the cable that you use in delivering power to the people? How do you also give proper rating for the transformers that you put there? So it means that in a number of cases, wrong cable or conductors are being used. And then if the current carrying capacity of those conductors are exceeded, they heat up. The moment they heat up, there are more power losses than the expected losses. These losses, who bears them? Also, the cables we use, we have Standard Organization of Nigeria, but I don't think they are doing a whole lot towards making sure that the right standard of cables with almost 98 to 100% copper is brought into the country. In most cases, you see conductors that are made of iron or brass. These are not very good conductors. They will only cause serious heating and power losses. And this is what these distribution companies are inheriting. Now, we look at the distribution voltage. The distribution voltage is at 415 or 220, the one that comes into your house. This is a very low voltage that anybody tampers with. So this has been encouraging a whole lot of thefts within the distribution lines. You may have seen people, welders, flinging conductors over these lines and then stealing the power. Who accounts for this? Now, to solve this, they should upgrade or increase that distribution to either 11 kilovolts or 33, and then have self-protected transformers mounted at interval that can feed just few houses. With this, nobody can draw close to 11 kV to tap. So part of the problem must have been solved. Otherwise, what they are having now, they are incurring a lot of losses without seeing them. Now, improper connections. There are a number of hotspots in a whole lot of interconnected points. And any hotspots means loss. You can use thermal cameras to look at these things in the night and see the amount of heat that is being dissipated from these points. These are all losses. You have improper stringing of lines where you have conductors sagging. At night or when the lines are heavily loaded, there is this fuel that exists that tends to cause those conductors to be oscillating. And in the process of oscillation, they could contact themselves and then cause a serious short circuit. And at the point of short circuit, you have current flow that is almost infinity and voltage of about 0. Now, who pays for this? Because a short circuit current is quite very high. It draws a whole lot of power. Who pays for that? You also have attitude of the people. Some people believe that it's not their responsibility to pay for electricity. Yet, they will want to get those electricity to power their appliances. We also have attitude of the distribution staff themselves that connive with some of these people, take money from them at the expense of the company. Now, what has this left? Huge losses, huge power losses that cannot be accounted for. So these distribution companies will not, therefore do not want to meter everybody. Because if they now come to meter everybody and you pay the exact amount of energy you have consumed, who pays for all these unseen losses? So they will prefer to now give estimated billing to people at the end of the month. The billing will be dependent on the amount of power they have received within that period. And then recently started rejecting power when they have been finding it difficult to now recover this revenue from people. This is the reason why we're having trap generation, even in the face of a whole lot of suppressed loads. The moment it is passed, you will see that a whole number of these distribution companies will head to the docks, because all these problems I've just mentioned have not been identified by many of them, are not even close to being solved. So if they will meter people and then collect revenue based on what they have actually used, these losses we mentioned will be an overhead on them. So it means they are no longer doing business. So the best thing for them to do will now be to look for alternative. Government may go in to buy these debts that they have really accrued over time in form of equity, and it means taking back the companies. my advice to young Nigerians watching me right now is that they should make use of their time, because time, they say, is money. A whole lot of them now think that social media is really where to be. The people boast of having 1,000, 10,000 followers. And the more you have these followers, the more time you are giving to them. If you are to say hello to every one of them in just one day, you may not be able to finish that. And then the time that you are supposed to use to study, the time you are supposed to use to develop yourself, is being wasted on something that people sat down to create. You are not even thinking, they are not even thinking of being enterprising in such a way to creating those things. So I tell them to really take their education very seriously, especially during the primary and secondary education, because this is when the foundations are laid. Every other time is building on the already laid foundation. They should really aspire for true greatness, and the time to do that is now. I'm a Nigerian, as you know, an enterprising, creative, and rational young man, not of the very social type. Far back in school, I had my own lab that was very functional, and then during my youth service, I expanded that into a system that I had a number of people do their IT with me when I was serving. And after that, my service, I incorporated my company, and this is where I am. I am a natural person. I like being close to nature. I got married to my best friend. We're blessed with lovely children. So I don't know if there's any more thing you want to know.
That's okay. That's okay for now. So once a very big thank you, sir, for making our time to be with us. Thank you so much, sir. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.